The brutal truth about why married women are the easiest prey. Most affairs don't start with betrayal, they start with emotional emptiness. This video exposes the hidden psychology behind why some married women seek validation outside their marriage. If you want to understand desire, temptation, and emotional erosion, this is for you. Learn how emotional distance, unmet needs, and identity loss open the door to infidelity. Watch to the end to uncover the signs and protect yourself from hidden traps. Most people don't set out to ruin their lives. No woman walks down the aisle imagining that one day she might drift from the vows she swore to uphold. But sometimes destruction doesn't come in one loud crash. It comes in whispers, in tiny moments, a glance that lingers too long, a message that feels a little too exciting, a conversation that feels more alive than the ones she has at home. These moments seem harmless, forgettable even, but they are not. They are the first cracks in a foundation that once felt unshakable. The truth no one wants to admit, and few dare to say, is that many married women who stray don't do it out of malice. They do it because they're starving for something they once had but quietly lost, to feel noticed, desired, alive. And the tragedy? Most of their husbands have no idea anything is missing. This isn't about infidelity in the traditional sense. It's about emotional starvation. When marriage turns into routine, all bills, chores, and checklists, the thrill of being chosen starts to fade. A woman who once felt radiant now feels invisible. And when she meets someone who sees her again, who listens and laughs and lingers in the moment, it lights a spark she thought had died long ago. It's not weakness. It's not betrayal. It's human nature. A slow erosion of emotional boundaries that happens so gradually, she doesn't even notice she's stepped into dangerous territory. And that's the real heartbreak. Not the betrayal of another person, but the quiet betrayal of oneself. Understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it reveals a deeper truth. If we don't tend to emotional connection, even the strongest bonds can fade into silence. And by the time someone realizes what's been lost, it might already be too late. No one wakes up and says, "Today I'm going to betray my marriage." That's not how it happens. The real danger doesn't come with fireworks. It comes wrapped in excuses. It begins with something simple, a text, a smile, a feeling of being seen. And she tells herself, "It's nothing. I'm just talking." But deep inside, something stirs, something long buried, the desire to feel wanted again. And that's when the mind begins its most dangerous game, justification. The human brain is a master of rationalizing behavior that feels good but goes against our core values. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the tension between what we believe and what we do. To resolve it, the mind bends reality. I'm not cheating. He just listens to me. My husband stopped caring years ago. I deserve to feel appreciated. What started as innocent now becomes a secret. Late-night texts, emotional dependency, private conversations that go deeper than they should. And all the while she tells herself, it's not physical, so it doesn't count. But here's the truth. Emotional infidelity is betrayal, often even more devastating, because the body can stray once. But when the heart leaves, that's a fracture few relationships recover from. The scariest part? These justifications don't feel like lies. They feel like truth, a truth built on emotional hunger, not logic. So what's the lesson here? If we don't guard our emotional boundaries, if we stop communicating honestly with our partners, we risk building a reality that feels right but is deeply wrong. The mind will always find ways to excuse what the heart has already chosen. And by the time we realize what we've justified, we've already gone too far. The greatest lies are not the ones we tell others. They're the ones we believe ourselves. It doesn't happen all at once. That's the terrifying part. Most people think betrayal is a single moment, a kiss, a meeting, a choice made in a flash. But in reality, it's a slow erosion, a conversation that went a little too far, a message that should have never been sent, a moment of silence that no longer feels uncomfortable. It feels exciting. This is what psychologists call the threshold effect, the point at which someone crosses an emotional or behavioral line for the first time. Not because they're evil, not because they meant to, but because they thought just this once, and then one more time, and slowly what was once unthinkable becomes normal. The heart adapts, the guilt fades, the mind grows comfortable with secrecy. That's when danger takes root, not in a single action, but in repeated ones. What was once unfaithful now feels routine. It's not the second or third time that ruins everything. It's the first lie, the first hidden message, the first time her pulse quickens when she hears a name that isn't her husband's. And when that line has been crossed enough times, the marriage is no longer the center of her emotional world. It becomes the background. The real connection, the real passion, lives elsewhere. But here's the lesson, and it's not just for women, it's for all of us. Be aware of your first step, not because you plan to fall, but because no one does. Guard your emotional boundaries like your future depends on them, because it does. What we allow once becomes easier to allow again. In love, as in life, small choices make big consequences. Catch them while they're small, before they become habits you can't break. At what point does a relationship truly end? Is it the first kiss with someone else? The night away? Or is it something far more subtle, more invisible? The truth is, most relationships don't shatter from a single blow. They crumble quietly from the inside out. It begins with emotional drift, a shift so small it feels harmless, a shared laugh with someone who isn't your spouse, a thought that lingers, a secret text, not scandalous, just emotionally charged. And in that moment, her heart begins to move. No affair has to be physical to break a bond. When emotional intimacy is rerouted, when she confides in someone else, seeks comfort elsewhere, or saves her stories for another man, the connection at home starts to starve. This is the danger few see coming. There are no clear lines, no confessions, just growing silence. Stoicism teaches us that peace begins within, but so does conflict. A woman may still sleep in the same bed, say the same words, but if her emotional world is no longer shared with her partner, the foundation begins to rot. And the heartbreaking part? Often no one notices until it's too late. So what's the lesson? Guard your emotional loyalty as fiercely as your physical one. In Stoic thought, we train our minds to resist impulse, not by force, but by clarity. Emotional discipline is the first defense. Be mindful of what you give away, even in small moments. Not every connection is innocent. Some are exits in disguise. Marriage is not just a partnership of bodies. It's a sanctuary of minds and hearts. When you start leaving pieces of yourself elsewhere, you're no longer whole at home. Choose where your soul belongs, and choose it every day. Most people think temptation is about lust, but the truth? It's about loneliness. We imagine infidelity starts in the heat of passion, a scandalous moment, a wild impulse. But what if it starts in the quiet? In the silence between two people who used to talk for hours, but now only exchange reminders and grocery lists? This is the story no one tells. Many married women don't go looking for danger. They're not out to betray their vows or seek something reckless. What they truly crave is to feel wanted again, not just physically, but emotionally. To feel like someone sees them, hears them, values them. Not as a wife or a mother, but as a woman, as a person. And when a stranger listens, truly listens, when a simple compliment lights up something she thought was lost forever, it doesn't feel like betrayal. It feels like oxygen after years of holding her breath. This is the emotional famine no one talks about. As Stoics, we are taught to observe without judgment, to understand human nature, not condemn it. And in that wisdom lies the lesson. Emotional neglect is the silent destroyer of connection. Most infidelity doesn't start with cheating, it starts with absence. So what's the remedy? Be present every day, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Notice the small things. Speak admiration. Create space for real conversations, not just schedules. Because when someone feels emotionally fed at home, they won't go seeking nourishment elsewhere. In the end, temptation only thrives where needs go unmet. And as Stoics, we don't control others, but we master ourselves. And sometimes that mastery begins by simply choosing to see the person right in front of us. Cheating doesn't always happen in a bedroom. Sometimes it happens in silence. No late-night meetups, no physical touch, just a growing list of secrets, a message left unread, a conversation she shares with someone who isn't her husband. And slowly, without warning, her emotional loyalty shifts, and no one even notices. This is where it begins. Not in lust, but in loneliness. She tells herself, "It's just talking." She smiles at the text. "It's innocent." She opens up about her frustrations, but not to her husband. And before she realizes it, she's built a second world, one that feels safer, warmer, more alive than the one she promised to protect. This is the emotional affair, and it's far more dangerous than most think. Why? Because the heart always leaves before the body does. In Stoic thought, betrayal isn't just a physical act. It's a fracture of duty, truth, and intention. Epictetus taught that we must align our thoughts with our actions and guard the gates of our mind where the battle for virtue is truly fought. When a woman gives someone else the part of her she once reserved for her husband, her thoughts, her laughter, her fears, the bond that once held her marriage together quietly begins to dissolve. So what's the lesson? Don't just fear the grand betrayal. Fear the small compromises that precede it. Fear the conversations that replace intimacy. Fear the truths that go unspoken. Because in the philosophy of the Stoics, the first betrayal isn't when you cross a line. It's when you move the line. Guard your heart, tend your mind, and when temptation comes, as it always does, meet it not with guilt, but with grounded, intentional strength. At first, it's just a conversation, a simple message, a compliment that lands a little too perfectly. But what most people miss is this. The most dangerous addictions don't start with chaos, they start with comfort. She tells herself it's harmless, until that one moment where her heart races, her fingers hesitate before hitting send, and she realizes she doesn't want to stop. Not because of him, but because of how he makes her feel. That feeling, it's not about romance, it's about revival. Neuroscientists have shown that emotional affairs stimulate the same dopamine pathways as substance addiction. It's not the person she's addicted to, it's the escape, the thrill of being desired, the rush of being seen again. It's chemical, it's psychological, and it's invisible to everyone but her. And here's the Stoic truth. The greatest battles are the ones fought silently, inside the mind. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Yet many forget this power when they start chasing fleeting pleasures to fill silent voids. In time, what once felt like a bold, dangerous step becomes routine. She stops noticing the lie. The boundaries blur. She gets better at hiding it, not just from others, but from herself. But in Stoicism, deception, even of the self, is a fracture of virtue. When you trade clarity for comfort, you begin to lose yourself. The lesson? Don't chase the high of feeling alive. Cultivate the courage to live honestly. Don't numb the emptiness with fantasy. Fill it with purpose. And above all, never let short-term pleasure redefine your long-term peace. Because once your peace depends on secrets, it's no longer peace. It's a prison. It doesn't happen all at once. Nobody wakes up and decides to lose themselves. But life has a way of pulling us away from who we once were, not with earthquakes, but with tiny tremors. A woman who once felt deeply loved may slowly become invisible in her own home. A man who once stood tall may now feel like he's fading into the background. And here's the twist. The most dangerous temptations don't feel dangerous at all. They feel like relief, like being seen, like breathing again after holding it in for years. It doesn't happen all at once. Nobody wakes up and decides to lose themselves. But life has a way of pulling us away from who we once were. Not with earthquakes, but with tiny tremors. A woman who once felt deeply loved may slowly become invisible in her own home. A man who once stood tall may now feel like he's fading into the background. And here's the twist. The most dangerous temptations don't feel dangerous at all. They feel like relief, like being seen, like breathing again after holding it in for years. But Marcus Aurelius once said, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." The Stoic path isn't about suppressing our feelings. It's about mastering them. Recognizing that emotional pain doesn't justify emotional betrayal. In a world that constantly whispers, "You deserve this," Stoicism reminds us, true strength lies in discipline, not desire, in choosing virtue even when no one else is watching. So if life has made you question your worth, don't seek escape. Seek clarity, because peace doesn't come from being desired again. It comes from remembering who you are. Until next time, stay stoic, stay sharp, stay sovereign.